The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Adrian Chung's penthouse office, but he barely noticed its warmth. His fingers drummed restlessly against the sleek mahogany desk as he reread the message from his family doctor. His grandmother's condition was deteriorating faster than expected. At 35, Adrian had achieved everything. Will compensate your agency and other clients for the inconvenience. You'll need to move into my penthouse for the duration. My grandmother will be staying with us, and we need to maintain the illusion around the clock. The word "us" hung in the air between them, feeling strangely significant. Lily stood and walked to the window, needing space to think. The city stretched out below, filled with millions of stories, but none quite like this one she was considering stepping into. She turned back to find Adrian watching her, his expression a mix of hope and resignation. "I have conditions," she said finally. "No inappropriate behavior. I maintain my dignity throughout this arrangement, and I want everything in writing." The relief on his face was palpable. "Of course. My lawyers will draw up the contracts immediately." As they shook hands to seal their agreement, neither could have predicted how this business arrangement would transform their lives. Adrian's phone buzzed. Another message from the family doctor. His grandmother would arrive in 3 days. They had 72 hours to turn a stranger into a wife, a housekeeper into a socialite, and a grieving man into someone ready to convince the world he'd found love again. The countdown to their charade had begun, but little did they know that the lines between pretense and reality would soon start to blur in ways neither of them could have imagined. The elevator doors opened directly into Adrian's penthouse, and Lily stepped out clutching her small suitcase, trying to mask her awe at the spectacular view. The morning light flooded the spacious living room, highlighting the minimal yet elegant decor. This would be her home for the next 15 days. "Your room is this way," Adrian said, leading her down a hallway. He seemed different here, more relaxed in his casual weekend clothes than he had been in his office suit. "I hope you'll be comfortable." The room turned out to be larger than her entire apartment. A king-sized bed faced floor-to-ceiling windows, and a walk-in closet already held a collection of designer clothes in her size. "I had my personal shopper select some appropriate items," Adrian explained, noticing her surprised expression. "We need to be convincing for my grandmother." Lily ran her fingers over a silk blouse that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "This is overwhelming." "I know." Adrian's voice softened. "But we only have today to prepare. My grandmother arrives tomorrow morning." He checked his watch. "Mrs. Lin will be here in an hour to help with your styling, and then we need to work on our story." The next few hours passed in a whirlwind. Mrs. Lin, a graceful woman in her 60s, transformed Lily with expert efficiency, teaching her how to style her hair, apply supple makeup, and carry herself like someone born into wealth. But it was her kind eyes and gentle encouragement that truly helped Lily find her confidence. "Remember," Mrs. Lin said as she adjusted Lily's posture, "you're not pretending to be someone else. You're just the best version of yourself." After lunch, Adrian and Lily sat in his study, crafting their love story. The best lies, they agreed, would be built on truth. "We met at a charity event," Adrian suggested, pacing near the window. "You were organizing it." Lily shook her head. "Too cliché. What about something simpler? Maybe I was consulting for one of your company's community outreach programs." Adrian stopped pacing. "That could work. It explains why you understand business, and it shows your caring nature." He sat across from her, their knees almost touching. "Tell me about your brother. We need to know each other's families." As Lily spoke about her brother's dream of becoming a doctor and their struggles after losing their parents, she noticed Adrian listening with genuine interest. She found herself asking about his late wife, then held her breath, worried she'd crossed a line. But Adrian surprised her by sharing stories about May, their college days, their shared love of old movies, the small traditions they'd created together. His voice grew thick with emotion, and Lily instinctively reached for his hand. The moment their fingers touched, both froze. Adrian pulled back first, clearing his throat. "We should practice dining etiquette." The formal dining room became their classroom. Adrian taught Lily which fork to use for each course, how to hold a wine glass properly, and the names of his grandmother's favorite traditional dishes. In return, Lily showed him how to relax his perfect posture just enough to seem more approachable. Your grandmother won't believe we're in love if you sit like you're in a board meeting, she teased, gently pushing his shoulders down. The casual touch sent an unexpected warmth through both of them. As evening approached, Adrian's housekeeper announced dinner. They ate in comfortable silence until Lily asked, "What was your grandmother like when you were young?" Adrian's face lit up with genuine joy. Is extraordinary. After my parents died, she gave up everything to raise me. She taught me to be strong but never hard, successful but never cruel. He smiled at a distant memory. She used to sneak me extra dessert when I was sad, saying a sweet treat helps a sweet heart heal. She sounds wonderful, Lily said softly, understanding better why this charade meant so much to him. She'll love you, Adrian replied, then quickly added, she'll believe our story. Later that night, as Lily prepared for bed in her luxurious new room, she caught her reflection in the mirror. Mrs. Lynn's styling had worn off, but something else had changed. The woman looking back at her seemed different, still herself, but somehow more. A knock at her door startled her. Adrian stood there, looking uncertain. I just wanted to say, thank you. For today? For understanding. Lily smiled. Get some sleep, Adrian. Tomorrow we become husband and wife. As she closed the door, neither of them acknowledged the strange flutter in their chests at those words. They had a role to play, a performance to deliver. But as they both laid awake in their separate rooms that night, they couldn't help wondering if some lines were already starting to blur. In less than 12 hours, Adrian's grandmother would arrive, and their carefully constructed story would be put to the test. They were as prepared as they could be, but no amount of practice could have prepared them for the real emotions beginning to stir beneath their pretense. The morning sun had barely risen when Adrian's grandmother, Madame Chang, arrived at the penthouse. She was smaller than Lily had imagined, but her presence filled the room with an undeniable energy. Despite her frail appearance, her eyes were sharp and alert, taking in every detail as Adrian helped her settle into the living room. So this is the woman who stole my grandson's heart, Madame Chang said, studying Lily with keen interest. Come closer, dear. Let me see you properly. Lily approached, her heart pounding beneath her carefully chosen silk blouse. She had rehearsed this moment countless times with Adrian, but nothing had prepared her for the warmth in the elderly woman's smile. Grandmother, Adrian began, but Madame Chang waved him quiet. Let her speak for herself, she insisted, patting the space beside her on the sofa. Tell me, how did you manage to break through my grandson's walls? He's been hiding behind his work for so long. Lily sat down, feeling Adrian's nervous gaze. Instead of reciting their practice story, she found herself speaking from the heart. Sometimes, she said softly, the right person comes along when you least expect it. Adrian showed me kindness when I needed it most, and I saw in him something worth knowing better. Adrian's sharp intake of breath was almost imperceptible, but Lily heard it. When she glanced his way, the intensity in his eyes made her cheeks warm. Madame Chang nodded approvingly. And you, Adrian? What drew you to Lily? Adrian moved closer, sitting on Lily's other side. Following their rehearsed plan, he reached for Lily's hand. What neither expected was the small shiver that ran through both of them at the contact. Her strength, he answered, his voice surprisingly genuine. The way she carries herself with grace despite life's challenges. She reminds me that it's possible to be both gentle and resilient. The morning passed peacefully as they shared tea and stories. Lily found herself enchanted by Madame Chang's tales of Adrian's childhood, especially the one about him trying to build a robot to do his homework when he was 10. Their peaceful moment was interrupted by the arrival of Adrian's closest friend and business partner, Robert Chen. He burst into the penthouse with his usual energy, then stopped short at the domestic scene before him. Adrian. Robert's confusion was evident. I've been trying to reach you all weekend. Why didn't you tell me you got married? The room grew tense. They hadn't prepared for this unexpected visitor. Adrian squeezed Lily's hand, a silent signal to stay calm. Robert, I'd like you to meet my wife, Lily, Adrian said smoothly. We wanted to keep things private, given the circumstances. Robert's eyes narrowed. He'd known Adrian since college, had been there through his grief after Maid's death. Something wasn't adding up. How wonderful, Madame Chang exclaimed. Robert, you must join us for lunch. I want to hear what you think of my new granddaughter-in-law." The next 2 hours were an exercise in careful navigation. Robert watched their every interaction while Madame Chang happily shared more family stories. Lily felt like she was walking on eggshells, trying to maintain their facade while Robert's suspicious glances made her increasingly nervous. After lunch, while Madame Chang rested in her room, Robert cornered them in the kitchen. "What's really going on here?" "Adrian, I was with you 2 weeks ago, and you never mentioned dating anyone, let alone getting married." Before Adrian could respond, Lily stepped forward. "Sometimes when you find the right person, you don't need to wait." She looked up at Adrian, silently pleading with him to follow her lead. "We wanted to share our happiness with Madame Chang while we could." Adrian wrapped an arm around her waist, the gesture meant to convince Robert, but sending unexpected warmth through both of them. "Not everyone's path to love follows the same timeline, old friend." Robert looked unconvinced, but was interrupted by Madame Chang's return. "Ah, there you all are. Lily dear, would you help me with something in my room?" As Lily followed Madame Chang, she heard Robert's lowered voice. "I hope you know what you're doing, Adrian." That evening, after Robert left and Madame Chang retired for the night, Adrian found Lily on the balcony. She stood watching the city lights, lost in thought. "You were amazing today," he said, joining her at the railing. "The way you handled Robert's questions." "I hate lying to them," Lily admitted. "Your grandmother is so lovely, and Robert clearly cares about you." Adrian turned to face her. "It's just for a few more days. Then everything can go back to normal." But as they stood there, the night air filled with unspoken words, both wondered if they even remembered what normal felt like anymore. The line between pretense and reality was becoming increasingly blurred, and neither was sure they wanted to find it again. In her room, Madame Chang sat at her window, watching her grandson and his supposed wife on the balcony below. A knowing smile played on her lips as she observed their body language, the way they unconsciously leaned toward each other, the gentle tension between them. Perhaps, she thought, this arrangement wasn't going quite as planned, but maybe that wasn't such a bad thing after all. A week into their arrangement, Lily woke to the sound of soft piano music drifting through the penthouse. The clock read 3 a.m. Wrapping herself in a soft robe, she followed the melancholy notes to find Adrian sitting at the grand piano in the living room, illuminated only by city lights. He didn't notice her at first, lost in the gentle melody. His fingers moved across the keys with practiced ease, playing a piece that seemed to carry all the weight of his unspoken feelings. Lily stood quietly, not wanting to break the spell. "Me loved Chopin," Adrian said suddenly, though he hadn't turned around. This was her favorite nocturne. She used to play it when she couldn't sleep. Lily moved closer, drawn by the vulnerability in his voice. "You miss her very much." "Every day." His fingers stilled on the keys. "But lately it's different. The memories don't hurt as much as they used to." She sat beside him on the piano bench, careful to maintain a small distance. "Tell me about her." Adrian's hands returned to the keys, playing softly as he spoke. "She was brilliant. A concert pianist. We met at a charity concert. She was performing, and I was there representing my company. She had this way of making everyone feel special, like they were the most interesting person in the room." "She sounds wonderful," Lily said genuinely. "She was." Adrian smiled at a memory. "She would have liked you, actually. Your kindness, it reminds me of her sometimes." The early morning hour seemed to create a bubble around them, making it easier to share truths they might have kept hidden in daylight. "My brother is like that too," Lily found herself saying. "He can make friends with anyone. Even when he's exhausted from his medical studies, he always has time to help others." Adrian's playing slowed. "How is he managing with his studies?" "He's brilliant at it. He works so hard." Lily's voice caught. "I just wish I could do more to help him." The music stopped completely as Adrian turned to face her. "You're already doing so much. Working multiple jobs, putting his dreams before your own." "They're not just his dreams," Lily admitted. "Our parents were both doctors. They died helping others during a natural disaster overseas. My brother wants to continue their legacy." Adrian's hand found hers in the dim light. This time, neither pulled away. The next morning, Madame Chang found them in the kitchen. Adrian was attempting to make breakfast while Lily tried not to laugh at his clear inexperience with the stove. You're holding the spatula like it's a business contract, she teased, stepping closer to guide his hand. Relax your grip. Cooking is about feeling, not force. My grandson cooking? Madame Chang's amused voice made them both jump. Now I've seen everything. Lily stepped back quickly, but not before Madame Chang noticed the natural intimacy of their position. The elderly woman hid her smile behind her teacup. Grandmother, Adrian started to explain, but she waved him off. Let me watch. It's not every day I get to see a miracle. Under Lily's patient guidance and his grandmother's entertained observation, Adrian managed to produce somewhat presentable pancakes. The pride on his face when he served them made Lily's heart flutter unexpectedly. Later that day, while Adrian was on a business call, Madame Chang asked Lily to help her sort through some old photo albums. As they sat together on the couch, the older woman shared stories behind each picture. This was Adrian's first science fair project, she said, pointing to a photo of a young boy with a serious expression and a complex-looking invention. He was always trying to solve problems even then. Lily smiled at the familiar determined look in young Adrian's eyes. He hasn't changed much, has he? Oh, he has, Madame Chang said softly. More than you know. Since you came, I've seen glimpses of the boy he used to be, before grief made him build all those walls. Lily's chest tightened. The genuine affection in Madame Chang's voice made their deception feel heavier than ever. That evening, Robert dropped by again, this time with documents requiring Adrian's immediate attention. As the two men disappeared into the study, Lily helped Madame Chang prepare for bed. You know, the elderly woman said as Lily adjusted her pillows, I wasn't sure about you at first. It seemed too sudden, too convenient. She patted Lily's hand. But watching you together, there's something real there, even if you both don't see it yet. Lily froze, her heart pounding. Don't worry, dear. Madame Chang's eyes twinkled. Sometimes the best love stories start in unexpected ways. Later, lying awake in her room, Lily thought about Madame Chang's words. She thought about Adrian's gentle vulnerability at the piano, about the way her skin tingled whenever they touched, about how natural it felt to stand close to him in the kitchen. Down the hall, Adrian sat at his desk, staring unseeing at the documents Robert had brought. His thoughts kept drifting to the way Lily's hands had guided his that morning, to her genuine interest in his memories of May, to the sound of her laugh when he'd made a mess of the pancake batter. Neither of them slept much that night, both acutely aware that their time together was running out, and both increasingly uncertain about how they felt about that fact. The truth has a way of surfacing at the most unexpected moments. For Adrian and Lily, it happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon, just 3 days before their arrangement was set to end. Lily was helping Madame Chang in the garden terrace when her phone buzzed with a message that made her hands shake. Her brother had been trying to pay his tuition, but discovered all his loans had mysteriously been paid off. The school's financial office mentioned something about a private educational foundation. She knew instantly who was behind it. Finding Adrian in his home office, Lily closed the door behind her. Did you pay off my brother's medical school loans? Adrian looked up from his laptop, his expression giving him away before he could speak. Lily, I can explain. Explain what? Her voice trembled. That you went behind my back. That you treated my family's struggles like another business transaction to be handled. I was trying to help. Adrian stood up, moving toward her. After what you told me about your parents, about your brother's dreams. I didn't tell you those things so you could throw money at them. The hurt in her voice made him stop in his tracks. Those stories, they were real. They weren't part of our act. Before Adrian could respond, Robert burst into the office without knocking. Adrian, we need to talk about. He stopped, looking between them. Am I interrupting something? No, Lily said quickly, wiping her eyes. I was just leaving. Actually, Robert closed the door firmly. This concerns both of you. I've been doing some digging, and things aren't adding up. No marriage license, no wedding photos, no paper trail at all. Want to explain that? The silence in the room grew thick. Adrian stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Lily. Robert, whatever you think you've discovered. Don't insult my intelligence, Robert cut him off. I've known you for 15 years, Adrian. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? The sudden marriage, the timing with your grandmother's condition. He turned to Lily. How much is he paying you? That's enough. Adrian's voice carried an authority that made both of them jump. No, it's not, Lily said quietly. He deserves the truth, just like your grandmother does. My grandmother? Adrian's face paled. No, we can't tell her. It would break her heart. It might interest you both to know, a familiar voice came from the doorway that I've known all along. They turned to find Madame Chang standing there, looking smaller than usual but somehow more formidable. She made her way to Adrian's office couch, sitting down with deliberate care. Grandmother, Adrian rushed to her side. You should be resting. I should be treated with respect, she corrected him gently. Did you think I wouldn't recognize an arranged marriage when I saw one? I agreed to one myself many years ago. The revelation stunned them all into silence. Your grandfather and I, she continued, were matched by our families. We didn't love each other at first, but love, real love, grew from respect, from kindness, from choosing each other every day. Her wise eyes moved between Adrian and Lily. Sometimes the heart finds its way even when the mind tries to keep everything strictly business. Lily sank into a chair, overwhelmed. I never meant to deceive you. Oh, my dear, Madame Chang smiled. The only people you and Adrian have been deceiving are yourselves. Robert, who had been watching this unfold, finally spoke. So what happens now? Now, Madame Chang said firmly, these two need to decide if they're brave enough to admit what's been growing between them this past week and a half. Adrian looked at Lily, really looked at her, and saw the confusion and hope in her eyes. I paid your brother's loans because I couldn't bear seeing you sacrifice everything for everyone else. You deserve a chance to pursue your own dreams too. And what about your dreams, Adrian? Lily asked softly. Are you ready to admit that you're allowed to be happy again? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Robert quietly excused himself, guiding Madame Chang out with him, leaving Adrian and Lily alone with all their unspoken truths. When Maid died, Adrian's voice was rough with emotion. I thought that was it for me. One great love per lifetime, that seemed fair. But then you came along with your quiet strength and your genuine heart, and suddenly... Suddenly what? Lily whispered. Suddenly I'm terrified, he admitted. Because this wasn't supposed to be real. In 3 days, you're supposed to walk away, and I'm supposed to go back to my organized, empty life. But the thought of that, he ran a hand through his hair in frustration. The thought of you leaving. Then asked me to stay, Lily said, her heart pounding. Not as part of a contract. Not as a business arrangement. Ask me to stay because you want me to. Their eyes met across the room, the pretense of their arrangement finally crumbling under the weight of genuine feeling. But before Adrian could respond, a commotion from outside the office drew their attention. Madame Chang had collapsed in the hallway. The moment shattered, leaving them with the harsh reminder that some things couldn't wait for perfect timing. As they rushed to help, both knew that whatever was growing between them would have to wait while they faced this new crisis together. The hospital waiting room felt like it was closing in on them. Adrian hadn't spoken a word since they arrived, his shoulders tense as he stared at the emergency room doors. Lily sat beside him, close enough to offer comfort but far enough to respect the invisible wall he'd built around himself. Family of Madame Chang. A doctor approached them, his expression carefully neutral. Adrian stood so quickly he almost stumbled. Yes, I'm her grandson. How is she? She's stable for now, the doctor explained. The medication we've prescribed should help, but... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Given her condition, it would be best if she remained hospitalized for observation. Whatever she needs, Adrian said firmly. The best care, private room, specialists. Adrian, Lily touched his arm gently. Let the doctor finish. The doctor nodded gratefully. She's asking for both of you. They found Madame Chang propped up in bed, looking fragile against the white hospital sheets, but with her usual sparkle in her eyes. Ah, there you are. Come closer, both of you. Adrian rushed to her side, taking her hand. Grandmother, I'm so sorry. If I hadn't upset you with all this deception. Hush, she squeezed his hand. My condition isn't your fault, though I must say, watching you two dance around your feelings has been quite exhausting. Lally hung back near the door, uncertain of her place in this family moment, but Madame Chang beckoned her closer. "You, my dear," she said, patting the bed beside her, "have brought life back into my grandson's eyes. Even if it started as an arrangement, what's grown between you is real. I've lived long enough to recognize true feelings when I see them." "Grandmother, please," Adrian's voice cracked. "You need to rest." "What I need," Madame Chang said firmly, "is for you both to stop hiding from the truth. Adrian, when your grandfather died, I thought my world had ended. But do you know what he told me in his final days?" Adrian shook his head, still clutching her hand. He said, "My love, life is too precious to spend it guarding against pain. Love fully, even if it means risking heartbreak." She turned to Lily. "When my grandson lost May, he locked away his heart. But you, without even trying, found the key." Lily felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I never meant for any of this to happen. It was supposed to be simple, just a business arrangement." "The heart," Madame Chang smiled, "rarely follows business plans." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "I'm sorry, but Madame Chang needs her rest now." "Wait," Madame Chang held up her hand. "Adrian, help me with my necklace." With shaking fingers, Adrian unclasped the delicate gold chain from his grandmother's neck. From it hung a small heart-shaped locket. "This," Madame Chang pressed it into Lily's palm, "has been passed down through our family for generations. Inside are pictures of Adrian's parents and May. I've been waiting for the right moment to add another photo." "Grandmother, I can't." Lily tried to return it, but Madame Chang closed her fingers around it. "You already have," she said softly. "Now go home, both of you. Think about what you really want. Life is too short for pretending." In the hallway, Robert was waiting with coffee. He handed them each a cup without comment, his earlier anger replaced by concern. "I'll stay with her tonight," he offered. "You both look exhausted." The ride home was silent, each lost in their own thoughts. When they reached the penthouse, Lily headed straight for her room. "I should pack." Adrian caught her wrist. "Don't." "The arrangement is practically over," she said, not meeting his eyes. "Your grandmother knows the truth. There's no reason for me to stay." "What if I want you to stay?" His voice was barely a whisper. Lily finally looked at him, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes. "Do you? Or are you just afraid of being alone again?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Everything's confused. When I'm with you, I feel. But then I think of May, and I feel guilty for feeling anything at all." "I would never try to replace her," Lily said gently, touching the locket at her throat. "She'll always be part of your heart, part of your family's story." "And what about our story?" Adrian asked. "Was it all just an act?" Lily thought about their early morning piano session, about cooking lessons and shared laughter, about the way her heart raced whenever he was near. "You know it wasn't." "Then stay," he said again. "Not because of a contract, not because of my grandmother, but because maybe we both deserve a chance to see what this could become." "I need time," Lily stepped back. "We both do. To figure out what's real and what was just part of the role we were playing." Adrian nodded slowly. "How much time?" "I don't know," she answered honestly. "But your grandmother was right about one thing. Life is too precious to spend it pretending." She turned and walked to her room, closing the door softly behind her. Adrian stood in the hallway, the ghost of her touch still lingering on his skin, realizing that for the first time since May's death, the thought of opening his heart again didn't feel like a betrayal. In her hospital room, Madame Chang smiled as she drifted off to sleep, knowing that sometimes the best love stories need a little push from fate and a wise grandmother to find their way. The last day arrived like a whisper, heavy with unspoken emotions and decisions that would change everything. Michael stood by the window, his fingers tracing the rim of a coffee mug, lost in thought. Priya sat across the room, her eyes darting between her two children playing and the man who had become more than just a temporary arrangement in their lives. 15 days had passed like a dream neither of them wanted to wake up from. The contract was supposed to be simple, companionship, nothing more. But life has its own way of writing stories that no legal document could ever contain. Michael cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "We need to talk," he said, his voice soft but determined. Priya's heart raced. She knew something big was coming. The children, Rohan, 8, and Asha, 5, continued playing, building a castle with blocks, oblivious to the emotional storm brewing around them. Michael watched them, a smile playing on his lips. Those kids had stolen his heart in ways he never thought possible. "I want to tear up the contract," Michael said finally. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Pryor's breath caught. She remembered the day she'd accepted this strange job. A lifeline when she was drowning in medical bills and overdue rent. A wealthy businessman offering temporary companionship seemed like a miracle. But now it was so much more. "I know this sounds crazy," Michael continued, "but these past 15 days have changed everything for me. I've seen your strength, your love for your children, your ability to find joy in the smallest moments." Tears welled up in Prina's eyes. She thought about the struggles, working multiple jobs, barely making ends meet, the constant worry about providing for her kids. And then this unexpected opportunity arrived, like a ray of hope breaking through dark clouds. Rohan looked up from his block castle. "Mom, can Mr. Michael stay and play with us?" The innocence of the question nearly broke Pryor's composure. Michael walked over, sitting down beside the children. "What do you think about me staying, not just for a few days, but maybe forever?" His eyes met Pryor's, a silent conversation passing between them. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about connection. About two people who had found unexpected healing in each other's presence. Michael had lost his wife years ago, carrying a pain that seemed impossible to overcome. Pryor had been fighting battles alone, her world revolving around her children's survival and happiness. "I don't want this to be a transaction," Michael said softly. "I want to be part of your family. Not because of a contract, but because I care." Asha crawled into his lap, her tiny hands playing with his watch. Michael's heart melted. These children, they didn't see his wealth or status. They saw a person who made their mother smile, who played silly games, who listened. Pryor took a deep breath. Her life had been about survival for so long. Finding moments of peace seemed like a luxury she could never afford. But here was an opportunity, not just financial stability, but a chance at real happiness. "My kids come first," she said firmly. It wasn't a question or a negotiation, it was a statement. Michael nodded. "Always," he promised. The block castle stood between them, a symbol of something fragile yet strong, just like their relationship, built carefully, piece by piece, with no guarantee it would stand, but with hope and determination. As the evening light filtered through the windows, casting a warm glow, they both knew this was more than a typical love story. This was about healing, about second chances, about finding family in the most unexpected places. Rohan looked up. "Can't we have pizza for dinner?" The mundane question broke the emotional tension, making them both laugh. "Pizza sounds perfect," Michael said, winking at Pryor. And just like that, a new chapter began. Not with grand declarations or dramatic promises, but with a simple meal, laughter, and the quiet understanding that sometimes love finds you when you least expect it. The contract was forgotten, torn into pieces just like the old limitations they had placed on their hearts.